Hello and welcome to Acquiring Movement Skills Screencast 4. Today's session is going to be our methods of manipulating practice. Okay, so basically what we're looking at, as you can see here, there's the middle bit. What you have to be able to do by the end of your next lesson is you need to be able to critically evaluate the different methods. Okay, these are the 4 different methods here, going around in the circle. What do you need to be able to do? So you might want to make a note of this. You need to be able to describe, give an example, and then also give advantages and disadvantages of each of these types of practice. Okay, so tonight's podcast is going to be basically about how you describe them. Tomorrow's lesson will look at how you put examples in them, and then I also need you to have an understanding of the key evaluative points that you'll be looking at during tomorrow's lesson. Okay, so starting off then, part practice. This is when, okay, you might have a skill, we'll look at skills tomorrow. Okay, you pick a subroutine, okay, so you isolate a subroutine from the skill, perfect it, and then put it back into the whole movement. You might be able to think of something you might use that for, okay, but ultimately, where you see the word part, that equals a subroutine, okay, so you have to isolate the subroutine, practice it, and then put it back into the whole skill. Now, progressive part practice is a little bit different, okay, so it starts the same, okay, so you isolated subroutines, but because you've got progressive in front of the part, what happens here is when you've isolated each subroutine of a skill, instead of just isolating them as separate parts and then putting them back into the whole skill, once you've done one part, you then progressively chain each one on. So I will go through this tomorrow on how it works, but the key definition is that you isolate subroutines and then you progressively chain each one on top of the previous subroutines. Okay. Whole practice then, okay, this basically just means that when you have a skill that you want to practice, whatever that skill is, you are going to practice it in its entirety. Now I've put in its entirety as a whole, as a slash there, and the reason why I've done that is because often in acquiring movement skills or any A-level PE, they don't like you to repeat the word that's in the practice, in the question, sorry. So if they ask you to describe whole practice, they don't want you to say the word whole. So I'll put entirety. If you put that with a dash, that's fine. Okay, it's the most effective method, and we'll look at why tomorrow. And then the 4th type of practice is whole, part, whole. So when you're looking at this, you're thinking about this. You've got 3 words to talk about. Firstly, whole. You practice a skill in its entirety. Then the teacher will identify a weak subroutine or part of the skill. You practice that weak subroutine, and then once the weak parts of weak subroutines are kind of perfected, it's put back into the whole skill. Okay, that is why it's called whole. Practice in its entirety, break down into the weak subroutines, practice, and then put it back into its entirety again. Now, they are the types of practice. What I need from you is a real attempt at trying to kind of simply understand the key words that are associated with each of those types of practice. And I've said to you, when you see the word part, we're talking about a subroutine. That's all that translates to. When you see progressive, that word has a link to chain and progressive chaining. If you have whole, we're thinking about the word entirety. And then if we have whole, part, whole, it's a combination of both. So ultimately, there's a sentence stem here, and the sentence stem is skill is practiced in. Everyone starts with that sentence stem. All you've got to make sure you can do is make a translation between the key word that allows you to describe whole or part. Okay, so first 4 things on your Cornell notes will be part, progressive part, practice, whole practice, and whole part whole. They're your first 4 things. You should have a description. Examples we'll look at tomorrow. Now, once we've looked at examples tomorrow, the next key focus is going to be, right, each one of these practices, or we're going to group them into part and whole, they need an evaluation. Evaluation means you must be able to give advantages and disadvantages. Now, there's certain common words or themes that will allow you to do this effectively, and they work like so. So when we're evaluating, we're going to be looking at certain key focus points. Those focus points are going to be as follows down here. Firstly, ability. The ability level, okay, of the performer who's taking part in the skill will dictate which practice type works best. Okay, boredom. Some practice types can be boring due to their makeup. Okay, we'll have a look at one of those, and that obviously will act as a disadvantage. Okay, this is a key one. Different classifications of skills will dictate which practice type is going to be best. Now, you will start to think now, we've looked at lots of classification of skills: low organisation, high organisation, open skills, closed skills, complex skills, simple skills. Certain practice types will be better for certain different classification of skills, and we'll have a look at which ones, so you can put an advantage of one type of practice is using this classification of skill, whereas another disadvantage of that could be using this type of skill. And we'll have a look at which ones go where. Danger, some practice types, the way they're structured, okay, if the skill is dangerous, it will be a real disadvantage to use that type of practice. Okay, so we'll have a look at those as well. Finally, penultimately, you're looking at confidence. So certain practice types, okay, will either increase or decrease confidence due to the way that they are set up. For example, is doing a skill in its entirety when you're a beginner, is that going to help your confidence? That's a question we'll look at tomorrow. Finally, certain practice types will allow you to become fluent and kinesthetic when you do a movement. Okay, so it means you can do it. If you're chopping it up all the time, is that going to allow you to have fluency? These are the key things. What do I need from you? I need you to have a good go at remembering all of the emboldened key terms here: ability, boredom, classification skills, danger, confidence, fluency. They should be your next key points in your Cornell notes after the 4 key methods of manipulating practice. Okay, thanks very much.